It's the Undressed Show. Yes, it's Wednesday night, Undressed again, recorded in front of an audience filled with the expectation and excitement of a young child on Christmas Eve. Yes, that youthful amazement that we all have when we're back at Conroy's Emporium, where you can catch anything your heart desires. Now, my fellow Undressed, yes, it's me, Jeremy Taylor, your host, and my job is to attempt to bring some semblance of credibility, a soupçon of amusement and light to the shadows of the mundane reality that's become our lives in the back of Conroy's. Yet as we look around and reflect on what we did to end up here, it's not made any easier as we realise that we are in fact here voluntarily. The rotting floorboards, the chairs with nails sticking through the seats, the old steak fries, creaking fans and no air conditioning. That failed just after the Korean War. Happy times. But I digress. On the naked but not undressed panel today, the very wise Dr. Orlando, Kathleen Taylor, Bulgaria's answer to Dr. Strangelove, Ivo Ivanov, and of course Tyler Durden. And first I want you to all know what's been going on at Conroy's Bar during the week. Well, as you know, Conroy talks to lots of people, and it's a source of constant amazement to me who he talks to and who walks in. A beautiful woman walked through the door, takes a seat at the bar the other day. Conroy spies her and rapidly approaches her, and he says, "Where have you been all my life?" asks Conroy. She replies, "Well, for the first half, I wasn't born." Poor old Conroy.
Good line, that. Oh, I like that.
So let's get on with the show. I checked at the weekend, and we're still getting hundreds of hits on the Undressed website. Clearly, we're competing now on an equal basis with the Hollywood porn sites for subscriptions. I'm interested to see what some of our guys think about these various different things. And do our kids remember these things? In fact, I'm a little older than our panel, and I wonder whether or not our panel remembers these things. So here's an idea. A floppy disk. Do you remember what a floppy disk is?
Oh, yeah.
You've seen a floppy disk. You can't say, "Oh, yeah." I want stories of floppy disks.
My uncle used to own a computer software store, and when I was a kid, I'd go in whenever I would visit my family. I'd go into the store for hours and play games on floppy disks.
On floppy disks?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so you actually used them, not just you
No,
heard about
I
them
didn't
from
just
your
throw them
mom.
around.
Same here. When I first started working on computers, they had migrated down to the 5 1/4 inch floppy from the big 8.5 inch floppies that looked like, literally looked like albums encased in a little square. So by the time I was in high school, they were the 5 1/2 inch or 5 1/4 inch floppies, and then we went down to the no longer floppy on the outside, 3.5 inch floppy disks.
Hard on the outside, soft on the inside, a bit like an armadillo.
Exactly.
What about a dial corded telephone? That's a dial, right? So you use the dial.
Had one of those.
Sorry, what is this dial
corded,
thing of which you refer
dial
to?
corded telephone.
You know, when you make that motion of your finger going around to say "call me," kids have no idea what the heck you're talking about.
Well, you can't make that. You can't make that dial. Yeah.
Yeah.
You literally have to just punch because the whole notion of a rotary dial is it doesn't even make sense anymore.
And compounded with that, just a dial tone itself.
Yeah.
If I say to a bunch of kids, "Oh, you guys know what a dial tone sounds like?" Maybe half of them know what I'm talking about. The other half,
Really?
like, what's
Oh,
that?
My kids are even a step worse. They don't understand that a phone is just a device for talking and not video. So they will pick up a phone and look at it like they are expecting a picture to appear somehow magically on the telephone. So
That would be so cool if you could do that.
There's a lovely thing of some woman who came across one of the 3 telephone booths left in the country, in a kiosk, right? And she decided it would be funny to get her child, who would be about 10, to try and make a telephone call.
Do you guys remember how big pagers were?
Well, that's one of my next ones. I was going to ask about a pager. What's a pager?
That was all the rage in the early 90s.
Yeah.
When you needed a pager and somebody would page you using their phone, their home phone, office phone.
Yeah.
And then their number will show up on the pager little
It's just
screen.
a long-distance goose, really.
And then you have to find a phone, a street phone or wherever, and give them a call.
I would call that the proto-poke.
Yes, that's good.
Yeah,
Proto
nice call.
poke. Yeah, PP.
I mean, if you were really cool, of course, when Kathleen and I were in politics at the end of the last century, in the beginning of this one, to be cool, you needed a pager and a cell phone. You had both.
True.
Heck, I discovered, like, I did a little bit archaeology in my garage, and I discovered a scroll wheel iPod with a scroll wheel.
Uh-huh.
And you show this nowadays to somebody, they think you're insane. Do you
You
remember
used to
those?
carry music on this?
Yeah.
All right, here's another question then for you. And Kathleen is not allowed to answer this, but I'd be interested to see.
Try and stop me.
IBM golf ball. What is an IBM golf ball?
IBM golf ball?
An IBM golf ball. What is an IBM
the
golf
blank
ball?
looks. I'm astonished. I
Yeah,
don't know.
They don't know what you don't. Tyler doesn't know.
I have no idea.
A golf
I'd
ball.
like to
Never
speak.
heard.
I'd like to ask our engineer. Does he know what an IBM golf ball?
Nope, he did not.
Yeah, an IBM. If someone says, "What might say to one's secretary, oh, what do you use?" And she
Oh,
would
the
say,
golf ball.
an IBM golf
Yeah.
ball.
You'd have to change from a 12-point to a 10-point golf ball.
It's a typewriter font ball.
It's one of the very first electronic typewriters.
Yeah.
I've never heard
all
it referred to as
typewriters
a
were
golf
big.
ball.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
never
That
heard
makes
that
perfect
either.
sense.
Everybody called it an
Yeah.
IBM.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
no.
Yeah, a lot of things will be going the way of the dodo. like-
Okay,
Yeah,
what about a
yeah.
35mm camera?
I have one.
A
Yeah,
lot of people
I
have
used to
one.
have one.
When's the
Rolleiflex
last time
or
you
something
used
like
it?
that.
I recently actually had found old 35mm films and took them to Walgreens and they processed them.
Really?
Oh, they
yes,
still will?
they still process
Oh, cool.
them.
Did they
And-
at least giggle a little bit when you brought it
No,
in?
no. In fact, they acted like this happens all the time.
Wow.
And they said, yeah, absolutely, no problemo.
I remember when the Polaroid camera came out and that was all the rage. And
Yeah.
now those are so obsolete.
you are not actually able to remember when the Polaroid camera.
I
came
do
out.
remember when that came out.
It's
Yeah,
older than
although
you.
those are so good for
Okay, it
indecent.
came out in my family at a certain point. Let's put it that way.
Those are excellent for indecent pictures because you get it right away, the picture, and then it doesn't proliferate.
Okay,
anywhere
here's
on the
one
internet.
for you:
Sounds like from
a
experience.
Yes.
ticker tape machine.
Ticker tape machine.
I
Yep.
have never seen one except in like a museum, but I'm aware of the technology.
I would
All
agree.
right.
I'd agree with the doctor. I've seen one in a museum.
Okay, then.
I hate to say that, but I have.
All right, what about a telex?
Telex
Never
I have
seen one.
seen.
I have seen a telex.
Yes.
I've actually used a telex.
As have I.
Would you like to tell the listeners what a telex is?
A telex?
Yeah.
Actually, you're like a precursor to the coffee machine, essentially.
Closer to a, it was used to send, what were those bulletins? Candygram,
Telegrams?
telegram. Thank you.
Telegram, yes.
Telegraph send telegrams.
Telegram.
Anybody here ever seen a telegram?
I've
Not
Has
a
seen,
anyone
bona
ever
fide
received
I've
a
seen it when I
telegram?
was young.
Oh.
But yeah, when I was a
All right,
kid.
here's another
Okay.
one for you: a slide projector.
Oh,
yeah.
Slide.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, AV
Somebody
Club
else
right here.
slides around. Yeah. Oh,
I used one of those last year, for God's sakes.
Oh, right, okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well,
How
what
about an
about...
Etch-a-Sketch?
Oh, my kids have Etch-a-Sketches.
They're
Oh, yeah, they
going,
still make
aren't
those.
they?
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Okay.
even though we don't have a telegraph anymore, the word telegraph still is being used in sports. Like he telegraphed that pass, you know, meaning that he gave away his intention, or don't telegraph your pass.
Yeah.
The coaches use that all the time. Interesting that
I
the
wonder
word has survived.
If the athletes that the coaches are saying that to,
They're like, what the heck?
where did this word come from? Yeah.
Now, what does an answering machine do?
What? It records messages when people call you on your
That's
home
not
phone.
out of date. People still use answering
People
phones.
actually use separate answering machines to
If
the
they have a
telephone.
home phone number,
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, can
but
be. Yeah.
the odds of that are pretty low.
Okay, does anyone remember using a CB radio?
Yep.
I had multiple CB radios.
As did I.
Yeah, CB radio. I'm sure truckers still use
Okay,
those.
so
Oh, they do.
we could go back a bit. I bet there's no one here who has ever used one of these, a walkie-talkie.
Boom.
Yeah,
Whoa.
I
Totally
have a
use those.
walkie-talkie.
Got some yeses on
Totally
that.
used those when I was
Yeah.
a kid.
They're
They're
Absolutely.
too much fun not to have.
Yeah.
Big walkie-talkie. All right, what about a Sony Walkman?
Yeah, I had one of those. I had a disc man as
Everybody
well.
had one of those.
So,
Oh, yeah.
what do you think is going to go out that our kids will be unfamiliar with that we've got now?
All of these things.
Actually, I could tell you something that's actually not a material thing, but the one thing that is gone from children today, when the youth today, is simply just the ability to problem solve, to solve your own problems in life.
It's going to be all Siri.
That doesn't,
Siri,
it's
tell
not going to
me.
be all Siri. My phone just tells me where to go and how to solve this problem instead of knowing
Well,
what
that's
to
a
do on your
scary,
own.
scary
Maps.
thought.
It's amazing. If
Oh,
you
Maps
Maps.
are going to be gone. Yeah.
Maps.
Yeah.
Maps that we
It's
used to buy
awfully
from the
hard
gas
will
to
be gone.
station.
find maps nowadays.
Road Atlas, that'll be gone.
Coins. 1 cent coins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think
They've been
they'll-
talking about that for a while.
Yeah, those will be gone. Maybe coins
Well,
altogether.
last one then, a Betamax.
Betamax? Oh, yeah.
Betamax. Yeah, all kinds of VHS
Just
tapes
out
are
of
gone.
Betamax when I was a kid.
Because Betamax came before VHS.
That's right.
And then VHS.
Those-
And then porn beat them.
Newspapers are almost a thing
Made
of the
sure that
past.
VHS won.
Yeah,
They're headed out. What about
VCRs.
books?
We've done the record player to death.
How do you mean?
Well, when we say discs,
Okay, but the thing about the record player is there are still a lot of people who they have a record player and they still will collect albums because they believe the albums still sound better than digital music today.
Vinyls.
just
What about
patent
cassette
silliness.
players then?
Now that is something that
That
you will
will
probably
never
see
come
that phase
back.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as being able to
Particularly-
play at least a CD or a vinyl,
Yeah.
or
I think
even
that's
an
the-
8-track.
well, that's pretty much gone.
I had an 8-track recorder as
They're
a kid.
collectors.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Oh,
rare.
you are such a nerd. It's great.
That's
Goddamn
probably has
right.
value now. That's a collectible.
I wish I could find it. Yeah.
I had an 8-track player. I mean, obviously you have 8 tracks in the car,
Mm-hmm.
but I had an 8-track player that I could rig up to my hi-fi.
Special.
Who here has had a record player hi-fi system in a piece of furniture that's as big as a couch?
That was my 8-track recorder.
Uh-huh.
Had a cassette deck, 8-track player / recorder, AM/FM radio, and record player, turntable.
There you go.
All in one in a package that was maybe 6 feet long and 4 feet tall.
Okay, I have to do one more. I said that was cine projector.
A what?
A thing for a film projector that's
Oh.
the
Yeah,
very old
yeah,
film.
yeah.
Oh,
like a
you
film
call-
reel projector.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like our parents would use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I would
And,
actually go to
embarrassing-
secondhand
Use one of
stores
those
and
before
yard
as well.
sales
Yeah.
and find those things and just take them apart for the optics all the time. I would just love finding.
You take them apart.
Oh,
You
yeah.
find these old antiques and you take them apart.
Oh yeah, that's what you do.
What do you do with the optics?
Oh, I just burn things.
Oh my God!
He lights
You're
ants on
just an
fire.
Evil genius.
When I was growing up, I was probably a conservative. Living in a huge house with holiday homes.
Of
Parents
course.
had staff, a small staff, private schools,
He said small
and
stuff.
and a father. Well, they weren't little.
Yeah.
Was it hard on the outside and
They
soft on the
were- they
inside?
were
Yeah. And
height
very floppy.
challenged and very floppy.
Yeah.
Private schools and a father who drove an Aston Martin.
Oh, keep going.
Now I'm a Liberal Democrat. What
And
makes
poor.
us change? Let's start with Lewis.
So this is actually something that I've been kind of interested to talk about for a while. I want to
So moving on.
I want to take a step back though, because I don't know that everybody on the. I'm in the same boat with you, Jeremy. For the first half of my
Your dad had an Aston Martin?
7 actually. No, for the first half of
That's
my
2.
political. I was thinking, yeah. So for the first half of my life, I considered myself to be a conservative Republican. And sometime in the mid '90s, I finally decided to make that break. And I'm assuming that the other people in the panel here are not the same, just from the conversations.
It
that
usually
we've had.
goes the other way around.
Yeah, it usually does in this country.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to break this topic down a little bit, and first of all, ask you guys: have you ever been part of a group that you didn't feel like you belonged to, or you didn't feel like it fit you? Now, Evo, I'm gonna guess
Yeah.
that
It
you
was
are
mandatory.
for your growing up experience that
Yeah.
you kind of dealt with that on
Yeah.
a daily basis.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
Very much so.
Can you give me
High
an
school.
example? High school.
Went to a Catholic private high school, and
Oh.
I'm not Catholic.
So-
when you're a Protestant in a Catholic high school, yeah, that's a little odd.
Yeah. So
Especially in theology class.
how did you deal with that? Did you? Okay, I have to say, just for the audience's sake, that my buddy Tyler here is one of my idols because he has never ever let himself be dictated to on how he's going to act or feel or think. It's one of the things that I admire most about him.
Well, thank you, doctor.
So I'm curious to know how you dealt with that, like being part of this thing that you weren't really a part of. Like, did it manifest itself physically? Did you fight to fit in? Like, what was your coping mechanism?
I was able to fit in basically with my mouth, with my smart-ass comments.
I didn't know how that was going to go there.
That's how that went. That's why I added that immediately, because I know this
Were
panel.
you gonna fit in, or other people were gonna fit in?
Oh, Lord.
Yum. But no,
So you-
honestly, I was able to kind of use my wit to fit in and make people laugh.
Gotcha.
And that got them to kind of accept me into the group a little bit.
Cool.
So
Cool. What about you, Kath?
Well, I guess if you count high school, not because it was any particular group.
Just the notion of high school.
Yeah.
So
I
did you
never,
try to fit in, or did you try
a
not
little
to fit
bit.
in?
I just didn't care.
You just didn't care.
I went off and read. I mean, I wasn't being bullied or anything. I just
Gotcha.
didn't. It wasn't me.
Uh-huh.
So I got through it and got
Yeah.
out of it.
So, no, that's perfect. Like what
Yeah.
I had actually written down just a couple of examples of what I thought people would come up with.
Hmm.
And religion, which is kind of what you hit on, was one of the things that I think people belong to that they don't really necessarily feel like they belong a lot of times, but because it's what people do, that's just kind of what you do. I thought about Amway. I'm sure that everybody here has at least at one point been invited to a dinner party only to find out that it's a scam to get signed up to sell stuff.
Oh yeah.
So those are just kind of the things that I was thinking about. And for me, it was the whole political party deal. I actually go back in my head trying to figure out if there is a definable event that really kind of made me switch from.
I would say probably the first one. I mean, especially if you go from conservative to Democrat. I think a lot of people tend to be more democratic when they get to college or when they get out of the house and they experience life for the first time. And that tends to kind of, they get exposed to different ideas and this idea of having power and being able to create a world that they think is the best. And so they kind of lean more towards the left. And then, as Evo was saying, you know, once they get out in the real world and get a career and start earning some money, money tends to corrupt them, and they want to hoard that, and then that tends to lead more people conservatively.
You get more pragmatic as well.
You do.
As there's more needs, and you're responsible for family and children, and you're becoming more pragmatic, basically, more goal-oriented. Whereas when you're younger, a college student, you try to change the world. You're idealistic.
Absolutely.
You're trying to forge some kind of just system and just place, and you're sympathetic to people's strife, and you want to help them. And then pragmatism takes over. You tend to become more conservative. It's interesting that you guys had the opposite.
I just wanted to ask Jeremy, can you point to an event?
Yeah, it's very interesting because I had a business. So I grew up in a conservative household. At that time, I didn't know that my mother was a liberal. In fact, I think my father died never knowing that my mother always voted liberal. The interesting thing, we have two sorts of clubs in England. We have what's known as the Con Club. That's short for Conservative Club, right? And then you have the socialist clubs or the working men's clubs, things like that. Some of those working men's clubs are huge and almost internationally known. They put on concerts and stuff like that. Where I lived, the Con Club did a very good lunch. And it was where you would take clients out to lunch. And so I was a member of the Con Club. But the funny thing was that when I got elected as a Liberal Democrat politician in England, the Con Club, the Conservatives, couldn't understand it. They said, but you're a member of the Con Club. No, I resigned a long time ago. I think what it was is that I didn't realise I resented Labour for the way they operated, and then I also didn't really like very much the far right. So I found myself naturally in the middle, where although I had a nice car and all that sort of stuff, I still thought that people should get free healthcare. And it just dawned on me that it wasn't right that someone, particularly as an elected person, you start to see people at their very lowest ebb, down to the last penny. And so when you have people come to you as a representative, you know, and say help, and that's when you really realise that you're not being a politician. Well, so I did anyway, just for the heck of it. You know, when a mother comes to you and says, "My husband's died and I've got no money, and the benefits people won't help me. What do I do?"
Basically, you were a charitable soul trapped in an opulent estate.
Something like that, yeah.
Life is so hard. Yeah.
And you know,
You
that-
like Batman.
and you asked when was the occasion?
Uh-huh.
The occasion was one day when I was driving the Bentley down the high street. Well, you would call it Main Street.
Oh, so
And I
many of my
couldn't-
stories
I-
start with that sentence.
I couldn't find anywhere to park it because it was just so much bigger than all the other cars.
That's a shame.
Oh,
All right, seriously, for me, it was pretty much exactly what you said, Tyler. It was,
Oh, you had a Bentley too?
I had 7.
Yes.
It was exposure to other people, but it's not exactly in the same way that Jeremy described it. For me, it was this recognition that I had been living my life according to this set of rules that I thought were absolutely necessary to be successful. So I met this guy, and there was lots of little inconsistencies with the conservative ideology that I had problems with, but I literally found myself going along with these things because I thought that that was the way to get out of the poverty and, all that horribleness that I dealt with as a kid. So anyway, I go off to college and I meet this guy, Chip Flippin. I'll never forget his name.
That was his name?
Chip Flippin.
Oh
Chip
my, how
Flippin.
can you forget
Oh,
this name?
dear.
Yeah.
He was the
Chip
first
Flippin.
openly gay guy I had ever met.
He had to be.
because
Yeah.
in
He had
my
no choice.
hometown, I grew up in a poor, predominantly black city environment. Like to my knowledge, there were no openly gay people. That obviously can't be right, but at the time that's how it felt. So anyway, Chip was he called himself the Flaming Chip. So
Of course he did.
and I remember meeting him and just being surprised that God didn't smite him like right then, just for being gay all out in public. Like it was like okay. And so after meeting him and understanding that he's not evil, he's not trying to
Convert you?
convert me or convert anybody else. He just likes guys, like I like girls.
Yeah.
And that's really the main difference between us.
And the name Chip Flippin.
And he has the
is
name
pretty
Chip Flippin.
Good difference there.
Yeah, maybe his parents should go to hell for naming him that.
There was all this questioning that started to occur about these things that I grew up believing. And to this day, there's still all these things that I'll fight the natural urge to join in on. For instance, death penalty. When I hear the premise behind the death penalty, that I can't remember if it was Dennis Miller or Henry Rollins that 20 years ago, back when Dennis Miller was liberal, made the joke, if you keep pissing in the drinking water, we're going to club you in the head. And I remember thinking, right on. And that was really kind of the argument that I would use to frame the death penalty. And as you get older, you realize that it's not that black and white. It's never that simple. But I still find myself, because that's really how I grew up, with my knee-jerk reaction wanting to be, rah, rah, rah. So for me, there's this constant pull from the conservative roots from which I grew up to the more enlightened position that I have right now. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason that I have wanted to talk about this for a while is because that reminds me, there's somebody in the news that's been in the news recently that it repulses me to watch. Because this person reminds me of the person that I used to be years and years and years ago. That is one Mr. Ben Carlson. Every time I watch him, I am reminded of that person that thought he had to be a certain way in order to succeed. So when I hear Ben, my first thought is, this guy is really, really confused. This guy is me when I was a teenager.
Yeah, I don't think Ben knows who Ben is.
But
I'm serious.
Religion can cloud your mind quite a lot, when it takes
I'm not
taken to that extreme.
I'm not sure that it's religion per se, though. I think religion definitely plays a part in it.
Yeah.
I think religion plays the part of providing the structure that the conservative side of the political spectrum has quite literally perverted and conflated that with good lawmaking.
Yeah.
So
But Ben Carson is I've wondered what the heck makes him stick with this adolescent view of the world that he seems to have. He never progressed into thinking about stuff.
well, here's my question, though.
There's
would
some
Ben
things.
would Ben Carson say the same thing about me or about Jeremy?
No,
Or-
he would quote scripture at you.
Yeah, that's the disappointing part.
Some things
Yeah.
don't make sense. Like Ben Carson, Caitlyn Jenner being right-wing Republican doesn't make any sense whatsoever because they will cast stones on that woman. You know,
Or
Yeah.
a far right, perhaps, homophobic, is that the right phrase, clergyman who I happened to meet in the cathedral city of Truro, where I used to live, who was preaching anti-gay rhetoric, and that he was saying that AIDS is God's damnation on gays. AIDS is God's damnation on gays. And so I walked up to this guy and I said, and I had a rolled up newspaper with me and I started to prod him, and my first wife pulled me away. And so I went off.
Your second wife would have helped prod.
And I came back a little bit later, 15 minutes later, when she'd gone in another shop. And I said to him, the little boy who you just didn't see, who's just walked off down the street asking his mother, why does God hate him? He's only 10, but he's got haemophilia, you see, and he's HIV positive. He doesn't know what gay is. But you've told him, because you've got a dog collar on, that God hates him. And his answer to me was, yes, that's very difficult. I can
Yeah.
remember it now. Yes.
God works in mysterious ways.
Yes.
That's
Do
the
you
favorite
suppose-
answer.
Very difficult.
Exactly.
Everything you don't understand.
your brother being a homophilic is what made you change from
Well,
what you were to what you are now?
Well, you know, I came to the States kind of conservative. I arrived here because we probably the most anti-communist crowd in the world was my generation growing up behind the Iron Curtain. We were so anti-communist, all the young people, because we grew up within the system, and we suffered through the system, and we hated every second of it. And obviously, I was against all social welfare when I came. I was really to the right, believing, about everyone for himself and all that stuff. I mean, we had to study philosophy in college, and we were only allowed to study in philosophy Marx and Engels, nothing else.
Lord.
And a little bit of Hegel. So everything else was forbidden. So we naturally gravitated towards finding banned books, old books by Nietzsche, and they were published before 1944. Nietzsche and Schopenhauer, things that were forbidden. And so when I arrived here, I was kind of leaning to the right. But you know what nudged me to the left was the horrible right here.
No, that's it. That's
The
entirely
rhetoric,
it.
I mean, the extreme hatred, the openly
the
evil points of view.
stupidity, the total stupidity.
it's just-
Okay, so I am not. And to this day, I will still not absolutely say that it's stupidity, but I will say that it is an absolute perversion of what I would consider to be the conservative ideals. There's a part that I talked about, or that I wanted to talk about in here, that was the big question that I had when I decided that it wasn't okay for me to call myself a conservative anymore, was, do I want to deal for the rest of my life with defending the hypocrisy of the left or the hypocrisy of the right? And for me, the hypocrisy of the left is this notion that Democrats liberals specifically, will talk about an ideal and back away from it when it becomes a specific. For instance, gay marriage. Right about the time that I decided that I am a Democrat, was the first time that gay marriage was on the ballots. There was an absolute backpedaling from every little person that I came across at the time on the notion of gay marriage. Well, they can have civil unions, but we're not ready yet to have gay marriages. That's just not something that we can do. And it was incredibly frustrating. And I think that if you talk to someone that lives a conservative lifestyle, they will say that hypocrisy is what keeps them from being a liberal. On the other hand, the conservatives are just so nasty. They have this paternalistic, judgmental, authoritarian streak throughout the party that just says, okay, I'm going to say that gays can't be married and I'm not going to justify it. I'm going to say the Bible says it,
Well,
and that's really all I need.
Yeah. The anti-science stance is what's really shocking for a foreigner when he comes here and starts investigating about the right and discovers the anti-science establishment within the Republican Party. That's just shocking to foreigners. And, but at the same
But
time...
isn't that new?
Well, not necessarily. I want to just say that we shouldn't be left and right. We should have our own opinions because the left sometimes is just as aggravating. For example, left can be anti-science too.
Oh, yeah.
All this vaccination madness. This is just ridiculous, and that's a left kind of stance.
Yeah.
So you got to find your own way, your own path, and don't just be a slave to a movement or right or left doctrine. Just have your own doctrine that makes sense to you.
I think
makes
it's
sense.
time for us to move on to the next subject. And Donald Trump has been clearly successful in achieving the Republican nomination. He says things that make a huge number of Americans cringe, but it's a fact that millions of Americans don't cringe and will very probably vote for him to be the president. It's a fact of life. The panel's question tonight, therefore, is what does this say about those millions of Americans who would not say, or heaven forbid admit, that they are racist bigots, who don't want any more immigrants, wherever they come from, and who think a wall to keep out South Americans or folk of non-Christian faith is actually a good thing, particularly in the light of our previous conversation, where we were talking about conservatives who just say that's how it is and don't back it up. I'm interested to know, what does it actually say about millions and millions and millions of Americans who will very probably vote for Donald Trump because they think he has a point?
I think a big part of it is people kind of forget just how young this country is. And our country is very kind of in the adolescent phase, if you will. And
even worse, teenage.
Yeah,
We're a teenager.
I'd probably even go with that, actually. And a lot of people forget what this country was founded on, about the religious right and the conservatives and the Puritans and just the religious vomit that this country was founded on. And it takes time to work through that. It takes time to actually think as a nation and evolve as a nation. And one of the things that this nation is failing at doing right now is evolving. In fact, we're almost moving backwards. Which is
What
kind
you're
of,
saying, it's like being a sort of 15-year-old who
Yeah,
hasn't
yeah.
actually got into the serious
pretty much. That
teenage
seems,
years, where it's just full of angst.
Yep.
Lewis.
I think angst is close to what I would define it as. I would define it as anxiety. I think that, going right along with what Tyler said, I don't think that the populace is old enough to have an informed opinion on what it would look like to have a equal and equitable society. I think that right now Donald Trump is peddling in fear because it works. I don't necessarily think that Donald Trump's rise to power shows us anything other than right now there is a entrenchment of power that's determined to keep that power, and whether we're talking about Rupert Murdoch or just the landed gentry right now, there is a disconnect between the people that should be going out and voting to make change and the people that are exercising all the power. And the people that are exercising all the power don't really feel a need to have anything be different.
Kathleen.
People who are exercising power are the ones who have the money. I think the whole problem in this country is that
True.
we have grown up idolizing rich people and money. And whatever they do, they can do no wrong. And everybody thinks this is the American ideal, that you too could grow up to be a billionaire, right? Or it used to be a millionaire.
And of course, to do that, who do you think of? You only think of yourself.
You only think
You
of
don't
yourself.
think of other people.
No. And they think that, hey, money is the be-all and end-all. And it's an attitude that we've had from the very beginning. I don't think we're going to grow out of it. I don't think we're adolescents. I think there's something fundamentally wrong about the way Americans think about things.
That's an interesting point, because I kind of agree with you there, because I think part of the problem is just the educational system. And honestly, there's this old idea that if you keep the people stupid and you keep them ignorant, it's much easier to control them and manipulate them.
And it got that way because the people who are in power doing this thing were able to cut money from education
Exactly.
systems.
You
and-
think there's something sinister going there with cutting budgets for universities and making it harder and harder to obtain scholarships for, trying
There's an
to
elite
keep,
in this country
trying
that
to
are
keep people
trying
from
very
getting
hard to
educated.
keep the elite.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I hear you, and I agree with everything you just said to a shocking degree, but I have a question/problem. How then do you reconcile the notion that now we do have gay marriage, now we do have civil rights, now we do have, I just went and looked for, I don't know what reason, until 1967, it was illegal for me to have married my wife because she's a different race. Until 2015, it was illegal for my cousin to marry her wife because they were the same sex.
I can tell you exactly why that happens.
Tell me.
Because when you give the populace a little bit of what they want, they shut up and they quit crying and they quit causing problems and they quit actually thinking and banding together. If you just give them a taste of what they want, then they go back to their lives and they don't worry about anything else anymore. That's pretty much what
How
you have.
much do you
have-
think, and in Tyler's case, you know a little bit about history, how much do you think this is like 1936, 5, 6, 7?
It's very frightening how similar it is. It's very frightening.
Because many of the people in Germany who didn't think of themselves as bigots at all, I mean, it didn't occur to them that they were bigots, but they knew that life was pretty tedious and they wanted someone to lead them out of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
You guys need to go on Netflix and watch a movie called Look Who's Back. It's a German movie in which Adolf Hitler travels through time from his bunker just before he dies, ends up in our times Germany, and without hiding his identity and using basically the same rhetoric, basically the same speeches that he used in 1936, he rises to power in modern day Germany, and everything he says is basically Donald Trump.
So he's orange.
Well, he's in a way,
He's an Oompa Loompa.
but he uses the same talking points, the same, basically the same angles, the same speeches, the same language, except Adolf Hitler had infinitely richer vocabulary and speaking skills than Donald Trump.
He used words
But-
with more than 2 syllables?
Yes.
Wow.
And it still managed to galvanize current unhappy people in Europe, unhappy with immigration, with the state of economy. And it's really an incredible movie and really, really frightening to watch. It's a comedy, but at some point during the movie you realize, wait a second, a comedy, really? This is freaking frightening.
Look
so
Who's
great
Back.
movie. Look Who's Back. Watch it. It's incredible.
But it's
Look for it.
interesting that we don't know who Joe Goebbels is yet.
Yeah.
And that
Propaganda
is
minister.
What we have. Joseph Goebbels, of course, was the first spin doctor,
Yeah.
and
I do love that title, Minister of Propaganda.
Yeah,
Can I be the Minister of Propaganda for
I
the
have
podcast?
I have a signed photograph of Joseph Goebbels.
Oh,
Believe
of
it or
course
not,
you do.
I do.
How old were you?
I really
14
do.
when
I
He
do.
kept it in his Aston Martin.
It's in our basement. But I think it's important that people realise that there are a lot of people in America who believe that what Trump is saying holds water. That we need somebody like that. They don't listen, it seems to me, to what's our reaction to Putin? Well, we don't stand up to Putin, says the Trump lot. We just send a destroyer into the Bosphorus just to crank up the Russians. That's
Just
what we do.
Simplicity works for some reason with the masses. Don't you agree,
Yeah,
Jeremy?
we have 2 aircraft carriers in the Mediterranean up near Turkey at the moment. So that's not us being tough, right? It's just, we're being a bit wussy when we do that,
Yeah.
They don't listen to the president, who keeps saying, I have never said anything. Please produce some video or recording of me saying we need to take people's guns away from them. They don't notice things like that. That just gets forgotten in this furor. I
Yeah.
discovered today that the CDC is not allowed to look at ways of making gun usage safer?
It's a little bit more insidious than that. They are technically not allowed to monitor gun deaths. Specifically, they're not allowed to monitor deaths that are caused by police. They're not allowed to monitor anything that is termed a justifiable homicide.
Yeah.
They're just not allowed to gather statistical data.
This is a topic for an entire podcast, and we really need to address this because it's become such a complicated.
And I want to
issue.
leave you with this thought of a friend of mine put this up on Facebook. The great Toby,
Yeah.
when he was working for President Bartlett, was on the TV in one of these talk shows, and he said, if you add the populations of Great Britain, France, Germany, Japan, Sweden, Spain, Denmark, and Australia,
About the same
they
population.
equate to roughly the same population of the USA. And the USA had over 300,000 gun deaths last year. Those countries had less than 150.
30,000.
There were 33,000 gun deaths.
33,000.
Not 300,000, 33,000.
I stand
It's
corrected.
still ridiculous.
I think
It is
it's-
still extremely ridiculous.
It's like a war.
Yes.
It's insane.
It's 11 times what died
Those
in
countries
in
has less than 150.
Yeah.
Is it because Americans are more homicidal, or is it simply that those countries have
All these
better
countries
gun-
have 150.
together?
More
They-
people die from wasp stings in the United States every year, and it's ridiculous. Unbelievable.
Actually, there are 30,000 car deaths a year. I think you'd be surprised about the math if you look it up, because I did.
More people die from guns than cars, right?
Yes.
Wow.
And no one is suggesting taking the guns away.
No.
What they're suggesting is looking at guns the same way they did with cars in the late 60s, bringing in seatbelts, airbags, that sort of thing.
I love
car
the
deaths have gone down.
I love the Fox News talking point, which has been distributed to absolutely everybody. You can hear it over and over again. This is not about guns. This is about terrorism. No, it's about guns and terrorism. It's about both things. You put them together, you have something serious happen. You know, and like the guy said on the Daily News recently, it was hilarious. He said, you look at ISIS and guns. You take the guns away from ISIS. ISIS is basically a blog.
That's true.
All right,
Moving on, the next thing that I would like to ask folks, it's a difficult one, this, but I think it's interesting all the same. Rape.
Oh, so it's decisively a dark podcast.
Dark podcast. Rape.
Jeez.
Who may, and here's the word, also be responsible. Clearly no means no, and so to carry on when one party says no or something similar, or to take advantage of a situation would seem obvious. Now let's discuss another take on who may also be responsible. In this particular incident, 22-year-old aspiring model from Brooklyn, searching for a way to get into the industry, contacts a website. She goes down, she meets the agent, he drugs and rapes her, and the rest is history. So she gets over it. And she goes home and she says, you know what?
You never get over that.
This just isn't, well, gets past it then.
Yeah.
This is just not good enough. And she decides that the rapist, who has got a life sentence, she can't do anything with him.
Yeah.
She's not going to get any money out of him. He's in prison and he's
Yeah.
going to be there for the next 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
So she sues the website.
Yeah.
And up until recently, under the CDA, the Communications Decency Act, websites, radio stations, places like that, books have been protected. A court has just given her permission for her case to proceed. So, this means that outfits like Craigslist, the Yellow Pages, Facebook, and organizations like that, all the dating sites may suddenly become liable.
Well,
Let's have the lady on the panel.
Well,
talk
it
I don't
doesn't
know about
necessarily mean they may become liable.
yeah.
Just because her case has been accepted doesn't mean she can prove negligence. If there's negligence of some sort, then the other websites had better make sure that they're not negligent too.
Yeah, it's case to case, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's apartment complexes that have had women that have been raped in the apartment complex have been sued by the woman for inadequate security measures or something. So that's a case probably that can be pursued. At the same time, newspapers, people can advertise their so-called modeling, in quotes, agencies in newspapers. Does that mean you can sue the newspaper? Do they have to perform investigation for everybody that places a classified in their classified section? It's really iffy, and it's really, I don't know, it's an area that is very vast and almost impossible, litigiously.
Yeah,
So-
I think it would be impossible to litigate for multiple reasons. Main one being we have the precedent that the medium that is used to commit a crime is, generally speaking, not held liable for the crime. If you commit a crime using the postal service, the victim of the crime doesn't sue the post office.
Yeah.
But if you've got a website that says, we have all the best modeling agencies,
Yes.
they're good modeling
That's why I'm saying
agencies,
case
trust
to case.
us.
Yeah, that's why it's case to case.
Then you got a
Yeah.
case. So,
Yeah,
so
no, I
it-
agree.
it's-
I agree
don't
with
think this is
that.
setting a precedent of
Yes.
any sort. I don't think it's that broad.
Yeah.
Okay, so an invention from Mr. Evo.
Invention. You know what? I have an invention, guys, and it's really fantastic. It's really fantastic. Now, I started thinking about this a couple of podcasts ago when we were talking about bizarre things that happen in the laboratory.
In the lavatory.
In the laboratory.
No, hang on.
Wait.
In the bathroom.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Oh,
Rex.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So-
Because I'm sure
In the
you say
crapper.
laboratory.
So
then.
I started thinking, what is a good way to monetize our bathroom experience? And I
could
came
take
up with
pictures.
something fantastic, something freaking fantastic.
With your Polaroid.
Imagine that you're a bar owner, just like our friend Conroy is
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
You have an incredible untapped potential and opportunity that includes your bathroom. And also this invention can literally change the direction the world of arts is going. So I came up with a urinal.
Oh, no.
Guys, listen to this. A vertical urinal with replaceable canvas cartridges. Basically, you have a calcium phosphate reactive cartridge that you place inside the vertical urinal. Then your patrons, when they arrive at the bathroom for their bathroom experience, they can literally create pieces of art on that canvas using,
What?
pardon the pun here, their stream of consciousness.
Okay. Question though, what are the ladies supposed to do?
I'm
I don't
feeling
know about
really,
the
really
ladies.
left
I was-
out here.
I was talking,
I could
for
aim,
now,
but I don't
I
think-
have
no,
conceptualized this, and I've even made some
Can you
some
run?
designs, for the men's bathroom. Now, the women's bathroom is left. We are not sure yet how this is going to work. But listen, this is incredible. Listen about this. This will blow your mind. Now
You
we are
mean even
talking-
more than the last one?
more. No, this is continuation. Okay, listen to this. We have famous artists scattered around the world. Imagine Picasso living in Madrid, in his late 60s, living in Madrid, and he's frequenting the same bar, Jose's bar in Madrid. The owner, Jose, he could have had these cartridges placed there every time Picasso went, and he would have, imagine having a Picasso original, Can you imagine?
whole thing was leading
You've
up
been
to that
waiting
point.
on that, haven't you?
Having something like that. Or,
Bravo, Mr.
I mean,
Ivanov.
there's like,
Bravo.
and imagine what could be better than having the palate of your bladder. What could be greater than holding an organic brush in your hand and creating art right there on the spot? And you know what? The bar patron, they can manipulate the palate with their menu. You add asparagus to your menu. Add different
Great day in the morning.
IPA, different IPA series you can create. With actual artists that frequent your bar.
You need to go outside more, man.
I
I
don't know about you, but coming from England, this sounds like the sort of bar I used to go to on a cold winter's night.
Yeah.
And you go out to the gents outside,
Yeah.
and there's a gully with a wall, and it's always painted black. And then you
Yeah.
can write messages to your friends
And now-
then come back indoors.
Now you don't write messages, you create art, you paint, you let your subconscious do the painting, you let it flow.
Oh.
Do you
know,
use
and
your
then-
hands?
Yeah, you just hold the
You
just
don't
hold the
hold-
brush. Most art comes, most great art
Brush
comes from
strokes.
impressions,
Yeah.
from subconsciousness.
Oh.
You let your kidneys, your bladder create the palette, and then you just spill everything on the canvas, and there you have a great. And not to mention, it will provide the bar owner with great streams of income and funding. You know, so it's fantastic.
I just want
No,
to.
wait a minute. If I'm the artist, I want to cut.
This you clearly taken Kathleen slightly to one side, and she was going to tell us about some interesting stories.
I was
in the
not going to
media,
go throw up.
and now she's forgotten.
No.
And she's going to have to ask us for some headlines. What headlines have we got?
Well, there was something on about Facebook. Facebook apologized for accidentally something in the Philippines.
Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook apologized for something accidentally blank. This
Something
is a headline.
in the Philippines.
In the Philippines. Do you know what it did? It declared
Google's
war.
all over the place.
it declared war.
That's not
yes,
cool.
it did.
Oh.
It apparently flew the Philippine flag upside down.
Good
got
job.
it.
Good Zuckerberg.
What's another one?
Well,
many have you
there
got?
was an unfortunate bird. There was
I can hear tribbles.
yes, a newly orange seagull rescued after falling into
That's
blank.
simple. Trump's hair.
He fell onto Trump, didn't he?
Oh, he didn't fall onto Trump. He fell into a vat of tikka masala,
A what?
Oh,
a
that
vat
was a
of
yummy
orange
seagull.
Indian food curry. They said he smelled amazing.
Yeah.
We'd have
And
eaten him
there was
if
a
he'd come
picture
here.
that he
We'd have
looked
eaten that bird.
There's so
identical.
many Trump jokes coming up there.
He looked identical to Donald Trump's head once he was
Yeah.
over. They had a
I
picture.
knew it.
Another
It was
one.
amazing.
One more, and then
One
we will
more?
go to the word.
All right. Here's about football. Euro 2016. Okay? UEFA is red-faced as the mascot shares a name with blank.
Gosh, is it Hitler?
Oh, I
I'm
remember
wanting
this
to
one.
go with.
I remember this
What
one.
what does the new mascot that they've designed for Euro 2016?
It's in France, so it may be a rooster or something.
I
No.
was thinking
A
Dr.
cock.
Evil.
No. The name of
You
the
can buy them
mascot is
for 20
Super
bucks.
Victor.
Super Victor.
And apparently, if
kinda
you
like
Google
Magnum.
Super Victor, you get a sex toy.
Sweet. And apparently Jeremy knows
In
that it
different
costs
colours.
$20.
Apparently,
yeah.
he knew it.
And Jeremy's got a Super Victor in his bag. right
Okay,
now.
we're going to go
That's
to
enough.
Dr. Orlando for the word. With Dr. Orlando's word, who's going to give us his word. He promises there will be a word, and
Oh my God.
Auriniculus.
That is not British slang, let me tell you.
this is not off Harry Potter.
No. Auriniculus. Aurenicolous. Auriniculus.
Auriniculus. It could be.
Is it living in sand, cloud-like in appearance, or a disease-related skin blemish?
So it could be living in sand, cloud-like in appearance, or a disease related to a skin blemish.
I'm sorry, I think I wrote that wrong. A skin blemish
Related to a disease.
related to a disease.
I'll go
Yes.
with
Like a
cloud-like.
melanoma or something.
I like the cloud-like.
I want to go sand. What the hell?
Auriniculus.
You're going with what one,
Sand.
Tyler? Sand.
Number one.
We got sand and clouds.
I'm going for 2 for the cloud.
Well, I'll go with 3
Flying
with the
through
skin blemish.
an
But
auriculus.
I don't know.
The answer is living in sand.
Boom.
Living in sand.
Auriniculus means living, growing, or burrowing in sand.
So
You've
Aaron
been
must be
listening
some
to
sort of-
Wednesday Night Undressed, despite your better intentions. Thanks to our producer and editor, Eric Holcomb, our engineer, Neil Rasmussen, Tom Conroy, of course, for letting us do this every week. Do come by and try his steak fries.
Oh, are you
And
original?
for running probably the coolest pub in the region. From me, your host, Jeremy Taylor, thanks for joining in. Don't forget to check into our radio shows live on KLWN 1320, particularly on Friday and Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. Central. Or you can go to the site Wednesday Night Undressed.
Yay.
A Conroy original.
You're-